Lesson 7.3, Equations with the Distributive Property. Lesson 7.3, Equations with the Distributive Property. Example 1. A. Solve 3 times x minus 5 plus 1 is equal to 2 plus x. Step 1. Use the distributive property. Distribute 3 to the terms within the parentheses. So we had 3 times x minus 5. So first we say 3 times x, and then we say 3 times that negative 5. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times a negative 5 is a negative 15. We bring down that plus 1, bring down the equal sign, bring down the 2, bring down the x. Next we look to simplify. To simplify, we're going to combine all terms that are alike on the left hand side and all terms that are alike on the right hand side of the equal sign. So on the left hand side, 3x is by itself. That is, there are no other x's on the left hand side other than 3x. So we bring that down. There's nothing to add or subtract to it. Now we got a negative 15 plus 1. A negative 15 plus a positive 1 will end up being a negative 14. Over here, the 2 and the x, they're different, so we can't do anything to them, so we bring them down. 2 comes down, x comes down. So now we have 3x minus 14 is equal to 2 plus x. So right now, we are solving an equation with variables on both sides. Variables on both sides. 3x is on the left-hand side, x is on the right-hand side. Step 2, use inverse operations to solve the equation. So we got a 3x and we got an x. 3x and an x. We want to put the x's on one side. So the question is, which x do we move? Do I move the 3x to this side or do I move the x to this side? Well, the rule we're going to follow is, when you have variables on both sides, after you have simplified, the rule we're going to follow is you move the smallest x. So between 3x and x, we're going to move the x. Now to move this x, it says a positive x, we must use inverse operations. So inverse is kind of like another way of saying opposite. So what's the opposite of positive? Negative. So therefore this says a positive x, so to each side I'm going to put a negative x and a negative x. Now 3x minus 1x is 2x. Don't forget there's a 1 in front of the x that you don't see. 3x minus 1x is 2x. You bring down that negative 14, that minus sign and the 14. Now you bring down the 2. There's nothing to add or subtract to that 2. Now a positive x, when you take a negative x from it, they cancel out. So that ends up going to 0. So there's nothing left there for the x's. All right, because you just got rid of your x term. So now that's gone and that's gone. So you're left with just 2. So now you have 2x minus 14 is equal to 4. 2x minus 14, is equal to 2, not 4. 2x minus 14 is equal to 2. Okay, now you are solving a two-step equation. Multiplication is 2 times x, and minus 14. Two-step equation. That means it contains multiplication and in this case subtraction. We want to get this x by itself. We want to get the 2x sitting by itself. So to do that, that negative 14 has to disappear. So we're going to add 14 to both sides. What's the opposite of a negative 14? A positive 14. So a positive 14 on this side and a positive 14 on that side. Okay, once again, what happens? When I go to add a negative 14, when combined with a positive 14, that goes to 0, so that's gone. I'm left with just 2x, so I bring my 2x down here. On this side, I got 2 plus 14. What's 2 plus 14? That's 16. So now I'm down to a one-step equation, 2 times. That's 2 times x. Now what's the opposite or the inverse of multiplication? It's going to be division, so therefore I must divide both sides by 2. Now what is 2 divided by 2? 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I'm left with just 1x. 1x. But notice how that 1 doesn't need to be there, because how many x's do you see? All you see is 1x there, so that 1 is not needed. All right, and then what is 16 divided by 2? 16 divided by 2 is 8. So x is equal to 8. Okay, example 1, part B. Solve 5 minus 7k is equal to a negative 4 times k plus 1 minus 3. Once again, we notice that our first step is going to be use the distributive property. All right, so on this side, there's no distributive property, so we just write down what we have. 5 minus 7 times k. And that's equal to, now we're going to use the distributive property. Negative 4 times k. Negative 4 times k. That's going to give me a negative 4k. Then I got negative 4 times 1. Negative 4 times that, positive 1. Negative 4 times positive 1 is a negative 4. And then my negative 3 I just bring down. Okay, now that we've applied the distributive property, now we're going to do the same thing we did in part A. We check both sides to see where we can combine like terms. So I'm on the left-hand side. The 5 and the 7k, they're not alike. So I just bring those down. 5 comes down, the minus sign comes down, and the 7k comes down. On this side, what can I combine? I got a 4k. Is there any other k on this side? And the answer is no. So the negative 4k comes down. Now I got a negative 4 minus 3. Negative 4 minus 3 is a negative 7. All right, now that I have that, now I have an equation where I have variables on both sides. Variables on both sides. And what's our rule? We know all the variables got to be on the same side. So either I got to move that negative 7k to this side, or I have to move the negative 4k to that side. And my rule is, we move the smallest k in this case. We move the smallest k. So between a negative 7k and a negative 4k, the smallest k should be the negative 7k. But the book, they're showing you by moving the larger number, which is the negative 4k. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do it the way they're doing it for right now. And then we'll try to explain to you why you try to avoid this if possible. But the main thing is, no matter what method you're using, the answer should be the same if you do your math correctly. Okay, here we go. So now we're going to move, in this case, we're going to move the larger one. All right, so now we got a negative 4k. I want to move that. So to move it, I'm going to do the inverse. The inverse of a negative 4k is a positive 4k. So a positive 4k to this side and a positive 4k to that side. Now I add going down. 5 plus 0 is 5. A negative 7k plus 4k is a negative 3k. On this side, I get a negative 4k plus a positive 4k. That goes to 0, so that's gone. So all I'm left with is negative 7. Now I got 5 minus 3k is equal to a negative 7k. I want to get the negative 3k by itself. So to do that, that 5 has to disappear. All right, to make it disappear, what's the opposite of a positive 5? A negative 5. When I do to one side, I do to the other side. So now a negative 5, when combined with a positive 5, goes to 0. Or you can just say 5 minus 5. That's 0. That's gone. So what are you left with? A negative 3k. Okay, now you got a negative 7 and a negative 5. A negative 7, when added to a negative 5, is a negative 12. So now you're going to divide both sides by a negative 3. So you divide both sides by a negative 3. Now why is that? Because this is a negative 3 times k. So what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So you divide both sides by a negative 3. A negative 3 divided by a negative 3, that's going to be just a positive 1. So you're left with just 1k. Once again, the 1 doesn't have to be written. Now what's a negative 12 divided by a negative 3? That's going to be a positive 4. So k is equal to 4. That's going to be our final answer. All right, let's go back to this step right here where we were saying that we like to move the smallest number. See, if we move the smallest number, it would be the -7. Now look what happens when we do that. So we got the -7 and we're going to move it. So we end up with a +7 on this side and a +7 on that side. So once again, the -7k, -7k, +7k, and +7k. Now, see how that cancels out? That's gone. Bring the 5 down, and look what you got right here. A -4k plus 7k. That ends up being a +3k. A +3k as opposed to a -3k. Positive is easier to work with, but your answers are going to be the same. Notice you bring the -7 down, so now you got 5 is equal to 3 times k minus 7. So now you want the k to be by itself, so you're going to move the 7, the -7. So to move the -7, you're going to say +7, +7. That's going to cancel out. And you're left with 5 plus 7 is 12. So you got 3k is equal to 12. Notice over here you got a -3k is equal to -12. See how there's more negatives there? And here is only positive. Okay, so now what's 12 divided by 3? 4. And then what's 3k divided by 3? It's just k. So you get the same answer both ways. Example 2. Eliminate the fraction. We got 3/4 times x minus 13 is equal to a -2 times 9 plus x. Okay, now we want to get rid of this fraction, and we're going to do it by multiplying by the denominator 4. And we'll show you why in a second. We're going to multiply by the denominator 4 to eliminate fractions all the way throughout the problem. Okay, so now notice how they multiply both sides of the equation by 4. 4 on this side and 4 on that side. So when you multiply 4 times 3/4, you come out with 3. All right, you can come up with the answer a couple of ways. 4 times 3/4 is equal to 3. You can do the shortcut way, realize that there's a 1 up under there. Now, what's 4 divided by 4? That's 1. And then what is 1 times 3? That's 3. That's one way to get the answer of 3. The other way, the old-fashioned way, is what's 4 times 3? 4 times 3 is 12. What's 1 times 4? That's 4. 12 divided by 4 is equal to 3. So that's how they came out with 3. So once again, all you did was multiply 4 times 3/4 and you got 3. Now you bring down your x minus 13. Keep that in the parentheses. Let's go to the other side. Now what is 4 times a -2? 4 times a -2 is a -8. And then you bring down what's in the parentheses, 9 plus x. 4 times a -2 is a -8. Don't touch what's inside the parentheses yet. That's 9 plus x, so you just bring that down. Okay, next we're going to use the distributive property. We're going to use the distributive property. And we're going to do it on both sides. So we got 3 times x, that's 3x. 3 times a -13, that's a -39. A -8 times 9, that's a -72. A -8 times a positive x is a -8x. Okay, now we're back to where we have an equation where we have variables on both sides, and we knew we must put the variables on the same side. And my rule is to move the smaller x. You don't have to, but you should. All right, if I move the smallest x, that means between 3x and a -8x, I'm going to move the -8x. All right, to move the -8x, I must add a positive 8x to both sides. So positive 8x, positive 8x. Now I add, going vertical, a -8x when combined with a positive 8x, that goes to 0, so that's canceled out. I'm just left with a -72 on that side. Then I have a -3x plus 8x, that's 11x. And then I bring down that a -39. Then I got 11x minus 39 is equal to a -72. I want to get this 11x by itself, so I'm going to add 39 to both sides. After doing so, the 39s will cancel out. I'm left with just 11x. Now I got 11x is equal to a -32 when adding a -72 plus 39. That comes to be a -33. I want to get this 11. I want to get this x by itself. So therefore I must divide both sides by 11. 11 divided by 11 is 1. And a -33 divided by 11 is a -3. So the final answer is x is equal to 3.